Thank you all for joining our first webinar of 2023. Just like last year, we're looking forward to help you learn from the best SaaS companies and their success stories in customer-facing analytics. Our goal with these webinars is to show you how embedded analytics is making a difference for SaaS product users in various industries, but of course also show you how you can make a difference with your product to help your users make confident but also data-driven decisions. And we couldn't have picked a better use case to start the year off with. Today we have Emmanuel Blanchet with us, COO and co-founder of Deepki, a platform with a mission to help real estate industry transition towards net zero emissions and sustainability. And of course, this is really important because climate change concerns us all. And I was really shocked when I read on Deepki's website that real estate is responsible for 37% of global carbon emissions. And so with their data platform, they're helping companies reduce their carbon footprint, which has an impact on all of us. But of course, reducing the carbon footprint and staying on top of all regulations is no joke. And that brings us to the story and guest speaker of today, Emmanuel. He will share how their powerful platform gathers all the data that property managers need and how they translate it into intuitive, insightful, tailored analytics to each customer specific needs, and this to make better decisions. And so without further ado, I'm very happy to present you Emmanuel Blanchet. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Karel, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, you're right. Real estate is clearly a part of the challenges regarding climate change and is also part of the solution. And that's something we decided to tackle when we started Deepki 8 years ago. And the purpose is clearly to help all real estate players to tackle this climate change issue and more to engage a net zero pathway. Just from the beginning, it was the purpose of the company to help all the real estate players to gather their data, to be able to take the right decision regarding a net zero pathway. And there was clearly an acceleration for the last 2 years regarding regulation and investors' need that push all asset managers and all real estate players to go forward and to move forward regarding ESG strategy and more to be compliant to a net zero pathway. Just in a few figures, Deepki, we are working today with more than 300 customers around all countries in Europe. We are working with top real estate players that have assets around Europe, even outside Europe, some assets in the APAC or in the US. We are more than 300 people, I would say, developers, ESG and real estate experts that help our customers in that journey. And then we are also partners with a lot of great initiatives like CREM, which is the net zero pathway for the European Commission, and then the GRESB, which is another example. Our offices are based in 5 countries: France, Spain, Italy, UK, and Germany. But then we are working through all countries where we have buildings. The combination, or maybe the strength of Deepki, is to be the perfect combination on a powerful data intelligence platform dedicated to ESG in the real estate. And then also on top of that, for making the perfect use of this platform, we have a bunch of high-level ESG and carbon specialists. Because when we are talking about ESG, it's always a question of platform and processes, but also a question of change management, because we have to set up some ESG processes regarding all the stakeholders, the property manager, the asset manager, the fund managers. And then also there is a question of methodology, because when the regulation is also a lot of challenges around the carbon calculation, for example, around taxonomy alignment. I don't know if you're familiar with all those vocabulary, but it's clearly an hot topic in the real estate. We design a framework to help our customers and the real estate players in that journey. This framework is starting with data because it is key, and that's obviously the reason why I'm here today to talk about that with Cumulaio. When we start about data, it's clearly data collection and data aggregation, but also the reliability of the data, all the way to clean and check the data to be sure that at the end we can take the right decision. So the second step is some insights regarding data analysis. And we need the proper insight to be sure, first, that we are able to report. There is a lot of reporting initiatives, some voluntary, like the GRESB again, or some asset by asset, like BREEAM or LEED, and some compulsory or regulation, like the European regulation, of course, SFDR and taxonomy, but then also some local regulation. And then after the reporting part, clearly this is not the objective, collect data and report on that. The objective is clearly to achieve a net zero pathway. And then we will set up asset by asset and at portfolio level, some investment plan to be compliant to this net zero pathway. And we want to take a look at the impact that we get after implementing those investment plans. This is quite a long journey. The purpose is to be sure that we achieve a net zero pathway, I would say, before 2050, which is the objective of the European Commission. But then it's also, when we say long term, even if it's a long term, we have to start now. When we talk about the real estate, it took years to refurbish the building. It took years to have impact and real impact. That's why it's clearly the moment to start. The main drivers for real estate to engage, and it's clearly now in everybody's mind in the real estate. First is this strong regulation in Europe, SFDR, which is a reporting regulation, and taxonomy, which is more performance regulation. Then it's clearly transparency, because when we are talking about the real estate player, they have also investors and customers, the tenants and investors where the reporting side is clearly really, really important. And then we have also the climate risk and awareness, because the purpose of what we are doing is to tackle the climate change independently of the regulation. So to do so, again, we combine a platform and expertise, but just to highlight some very important features of the platform, we are using AI-driven automatic data collection, which means that we need to get those data as much as possible and with an automatic data collection. Why? Because it takes a lot of time. We are working with big players, meaning that we have like more than 50 or 100 assets. So it's not possible to do it manually. It takes too much time. At the end, you can't have any time to analyze your data if you take 1 year to collect the data. That's why we, as much as possible, we collect and aggregate automatically those data. And then we have some dashboard and to provide the first insights. And then we have some pathway features. I would say, if I focus on the data analysis part, we need to sometimes customize some dashboard and allow the customers to better understand their with a building or asset data. The first challenge is clearly to have the right data, liable data, and then the proper way of displaying those data. So the purpose of what we are doing is clearly to centralize all ESG data in the same place at every level, asset level, fund level, and portfolio level. I would say one of the issue, and that's maybe what the thing where I want to insist on today, is clearly there is a lot of frameworks. First, because the maturity of the ESG reporting is not there, because the regulation is coming, but is, I would say, ongoing. And then we have also some voluntary initiatives. Maybe you have heard about GRESB, you have heard about the CREM. There is Energy Star in the US. You have the CDP, which is more a carbon reporting framework. And then you have the regulation, SFDR, which is a reporting regulation dedicated to the financial institutions. And then the taxonomy. The taxonomy is one of the key tools of the European Commission to align all the activities in Europe to achieve the net zero ambition of Europe. And then the issue when you have those frameworks is, I would say 5 to 6 years ago, working with ESG was clearly a reactive job. The ESG team answering every week or every day to new initiatives for different type of customers or stakeholders. And then it's quite complicated. Then the purpose of what we are doing is to start centralizing all those data in the same platform, all the ESG data, and then take the different frameworks as outputs. So sometimes you are collecting energy and CO2 emissions data, for example. So it will be interesting to have as an output all the CO2 intensities of your buildings for the GRESB assessment, but also, of course, for the SFDR reporting. And it is the same data. Sometimes we have some methodological choice, or the way of displaying the data are not the same, but it is the same raw data. And that's why we want to first centralize all ESG data in the same platform, and then answering to initiatives and outputs like those ones. And there is also a question of aggregation. For example, the CDP, it's more at portfolio or corporate level, when GRESB or SFDR can be at fund level, and when sometimes you need a taxonomy alignment at asset level. So to be sure that we are able to answer to all these different frameworks, we need to have the same data, and then to proceed and design dashboard and KPIs at every level. And then it's an example, but it seems to be like a nightmare of framework, but it's not the case. It's clearly that you have some timing regarding those assessments or reporting, and you have also some level of detail depending of the reporting. So it's an example of a real estate player. On the platform, you have an ongoing reporting on intensities like CO2 emissions, for example, and you need on a quarterly basis to have investors reporting on the data collection progress, or on some intensity, or on some investment plan progress. And then you have a yearly reporting for SFDR, for example, the regulation, or for your investors reporting. So again, depending on all the reporting you have to produce, you need to have those different frameworks. That's where it's interesting to insist on that today, because we are focusing on a really typical use case, because you have a lot of frameworks or a lot of different outputs. For the same use of the data, we need to design sometimes complex or specific dashboard. And that's why the embedded dashboard can be really interesting at that point. For, I would say, maybe 70 or 80% of our customers, we can use a standard dashboard, and it's directly in our platform for pathway, for example, or just for simple KPI like CO2 emissions. But then, where it comes with really complex need, like the one I just showed you, because you have a quarterly reporting and a yearly reporting, and it's not only one, you have like 10 reporting, we need to design some specific analytics or some specific dashboard. And that's exactly where it's really important. And the use case we presented just in that case is clearly we need to use an embedded dashboard, and we use the Cumuleo solution. It's typically a use case where we are dealing with complexity with our partner. And again, 80 or 90% of our job is standard in our standard platform. And like that, we can have in the same platform all the data and all the analytics we need to answer different and sometimes specific needs for our customers. It's a question of frameworks, like I said, but it can be also a question of stakeholders. Because actually, in the real estate industry, you have different people that are using maybe the same data, but not in the same angle. Clearly, more and more, it's a CEO decision or a C-level decision, because it depends of the strategy of the fund or strategy of the company regarding the real estate portfolio. So we need to apply or to be aligned with the strategy, the ESG strategy, and we design the platform to do so. And then the C-level needs some specific report to be sure that the progress of the strategy is there. But then we have also the fund managers that can have a specific strategy, because I have, for example, a value-added fund where I do specific refurbishments, taking into account some assets, and maybe I can have a CO2 emissions objective for these funds. In terms of regulation, we call that an Article 9 or Article 8 fund, for example. But then, so it depends on your strategy and at the fund level. So you probably need some specific report if you are Article 9, and some specific report if you are Article 8. And then you have the ESG team, for example, that must work on all the assets and all the funds, and maybe will be have access to a specific analytics and specific report at a global level and fund level. And then we have a lot of discussion, of course, with the IT team regarding data security, regarding also the technological exchange. For example, they need some data and we provide a specific API for them. And then we have also at property level some specific dashboard for property managers, for example. During the first phase or first steps, it's clearly for data collection progress, because we onboard property managers to be able to have the right data inside the platform. But then it will be regarding the pathway, the net zero pathway, it will be the people that will be in charge of the implementation of the investment plan. So after the data collection phase, there will be the CapEx phase or action plan phase, where they need to follow the progress of the action plan. And it will be a specific dashboard and a specific reporting regarding those stakeholders. So as you can see, we have some different needs regarding the stakeholders, and the ability to design the dashboard stakeholder by stakeholder is clearly easier with the embedded dashboard solution. So thank you very much. I hope that it was quite clear regarding our use case in the real estate industry. So I let the floor to any question that you can have on this use case.
I see we got a question of Laurent Beignet. Do you have API to existing IT tools within customers? And so can you give an example to the most frequent ones in order to have to avoid double entry and enrich dashboards with new entry?
Yeah. Actually, yes, we have API, and to be transparent, we have API in and API out. So the use case of API in is, for example, we are working in the ESG for real estate, but then some information or some data is coming from property software, like, for example, the ID of the building, like the address, the floor area. So it's typically some information that we get from the ERP or the software of our customer. And we need API in to be sure that the data is controlled by the property information software, like SAP, like AltaX, like maybe Salesforce. And so it more technical information regarding the buildings are filled in directly via API in the application. And then we have also API out regarding use cases of, for example, you have a corporate that have a real estate portfolio, but maybe other activities. So we will send some KPIs regarding the real estate to a pure reporting or financial reporting software. We have also some use cases where we have some API out into for more operational software for the action plan implementation.
Another question that I see here, I'm not sure if you would be open to that, but would you mind showing how the current insights setup look like?
You mean directly in the platform?
If that's possible, I'm not sure if that's. I think in terms of security and data, that might not be as easy as we think.
Because we can't share our customer platform.
No, indeed.
But then, if I just show you this one, here it's a screenshot inside the platform. So on the left, we have our standard dashboard. I can zoom in, but then here we have the embedded Cumulao dashboard, and it's directly into our platform because you have on the left, it's the Deepki menu.
Yeah, cool. And I see you tailor to a specific list of users. Are there a lot of requests coming in for changes, or are you able to cover most of their needs?
Actually, we can cover most of their needs, but when it's the use case which is really powerful regarding analytics is sometimes it's the same information on the same data, but they don't want to see the same angle on the data. So maybe regarding the timing, a yearly KPI is not the same than a quarterly KPI. Maybe on sometime it's more on the cumulated energy savings, and sometimes it's more on the yearly energy savings. So it depends of what you need. And then maybe on your question, there is also, are we able to provide the same KPIs for every customer? So I would say 80% yes, but then sometime, or 90% yes, but sometime the 10% additional KPI that will be really useful and insightful and maybe that is necessary regarding the embedded dashboard can help to have the full coverage of the needs in the same platform.
Cool. I see some questions being typed. Are you working with real estate agents or agencies? And if yes, what is the benefit for them?
I would say not yet. Clearly, maybe when we talk about real estate players in this presentation, our customers are professional asset managers that manage or own more than 50 or 100 assets. So it's usually funds, banks, insurance company, and then it's clear. Maybe another point is clearly on existing building. So we are not working with construction company or so on. We are working with the existing building stock.
Clear. And maybe a question from me to you. Did you ever consider building them yourself, these reports, or was that from the start out of the question?
No, you're right. We started to think about just building a standard dashboard and try to make sure that this dashboard is answering to 100% of our customer. And then we decided to build another one because we said that, okay, for this type of customer, this one is suiting perfectly, but this one will suit to other customers. And then another ask, and then another question. And then there is the European regulation. So that's exactly why at one point we say, okay, maybe we need to have this standard dashboard, but as soon as we have some question about the missing information in the dashboard, or maybe some missing charts, or maybe actually we need a solution because there is a professional and that's their job to do some analytics and BI tools. And that's why we clearly need to embed it.
Yeah, interesting. Let's see if there's other questions here.
Yeah, just maybe on the real estate agent question.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not sure, but I can talk about that because yes, we are working on existing building because it's part of the, I would say 80% of the job for the net zero pathway will be on the building stock. It means that for new buildings now it's okay, we can build some very performant building, but then the building stock, since the beginning, nobody is taking care. So the new regulations are clearly dedicated to the building stocks, and that's why asset managers and real estate owners start to have a regulation on that. But then regarding what we call the real estate agent, there is one step of the real estate industry that is clearly also in our mind, is the due deal phase. Because when you buy a building, now you have to be sure that it will be part of your net zero pathway. It wasn't the case before, but more and more, when you engage a net zero pathway, now you have to check during the due deal phase. And sometimes that's why, or where we can deal with real estate agents. And we also need to deploy some features on that to be sure that the net zero pathway is including all the life cycle of the real estate industry. So the benefit for them could be, because at the end, maybe I didn't mention that, but the reason why now ESG is included in the real estate job is because regarding the regulation and the net zero pathway, it becomes a financial risk for real estate players, actually. If your asset is not compliant to a pathway, it means that some buyers or some occupiers can negotiate or maybe don't want to be or to rent or to buy this asset. So it's a financial risk, and it's not anymore just a communication challenge or an ESG issue. So that's why it will be in all the life cycle. And of course, at one point, the real estate agent will be also part of this.
No.
In some countries, so globally, the European regulation is done for now, and what we call the taxonomy alignment is exactly that. But we have also some local regulation in the Netherlands, for example, or in the UK. it's now forbidden to rent or sell some EPC E and F buildings. That's a start to have a signal on the market. It means that either you refurbish your building before you want to sell it, or there will be negotiation with the buyer, or it's forbidden. So now maybe soon you won't have the choice.
And given these local regulations, do you adapt your dashboards to these local questions?
Yes, it appears. For example, in France, we have a pathway in energy. In the Netherlands and the UK, we have a EPC thresholds, I would say. Then in Italy, we have also a type of framework regarding energy saving. So yes, depending on the country, when we talk about stakeholders, it was maybe a simple view. Actually, when we are working with an asset manager, which manage our own assets, 100 assets in Europe, we are talking about maybe 100 stakeholders. So we are not designing 100 dashboard, don't worry, even if it's really easy with a embedded dashboard accumulator. But then maybe 5 to 10 different type of dashboard to be sure that it's totally suited to the need of the country and the stakeholders.
Yeah.
The usual use case before that, it's clearly that you are collecting the data and gathering the data in the same platform, and then you do an Excel extraction, and you do your own analytics. So we want to avoid those waste of time during extraction analytics to be sure that we have all in the same platform and the decision-making capacity the same platform.
Yeah, and everybody's talking about the same metrics, the same values, same definitions.
Exactly.
Yeah, really impressing what you're doing, and then I think it's a clear example of how much of an impact you can have and you can make towards your end users into supplying the information that for them indeed, like you mentioned, can be financial risks and huge financial risks, and by doing so, helping the whole world in terms of sustainability. So a very nice and beautiful example.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you.
Are there any more questions here? If not, I suggest I see one more person typing. Yeah, no, they're just saying thanks. Thanks a lot, Emmanuel. So thanks a lot for doing this webinar. I think it was really interesting. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Of course, if there's any questions, feel free to contact both of us. We'll be happy to share some more insights there.
Yes, thank you very much, Karel and Cumulayo team. Bye.
You all. Bye.